I stood frozen in the hallway outside our bedroom, my hand pressed against the wall for support. My stitches still ached from childbirth 3 weeks earlier. Through the crack in the door, I heard my husband Tyler's voice, low and confident, talking to our nanny, Vanessa. "Once the divorce is final, we can make this official," he said. "She refuses to perform her duties as a wife." "I'm done waiting." Vanessa laughed, a sound that cut through me like glass. "Poor thing can't even satisfy her own husband," she said mockingly. My postpartum pain, the tears I'd cried alone at night, the bleeding that wouldn't stop, it all became their private joke. My legs trembled. This wasn't some distant fantasy. This was a plan already in motion. They weren't hiding anymore. They were counting down. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. Our 3-week-old daughter, Emma, slept peacefully in the nursery down the hall, completely unaware that her father was dismantling our family. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Everything I believed about my marriage died in that hallway. But something else was born, clarity. That night, Tyler came to bed late, smelling of cologne I didn't recognize. I pretended to sleep, my eyes barely open, watching him check his phone with a small smile. When I finally confronted him the next morning, he didn't even flinch. "You've been unavailable for weeks," he said coldly, pouring his coffee like we were discussing the weather. "I have needs. You're supposed to be my wife, but you act like childbirth excuses you from everything." I stared at him, still bleeding, still in pain, still healing from bringing his child into the world. "I just gave birth 3 weeks ago," I whispered. He shrugged. "Other women bounce back faster. Maybe if you tried harder, I wouldn't feel so pushed away." His words hit like punches. I asked about Vanessa directly, my voice shaking. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, "She understands what partnership means. She doesn't make excuses." I realized then that empathy had left our marriage long ago. He saw my pain as inconvenience, my healing as rejection, my humanity as failure. I was being replaced, and he didn't even have the decency to hide it anymore. 2 days later, Tyler gave me an ultimatum over breakfast. "Either you get back to normal, fast, or I'm going to move on," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "I'll do it respectfully. File properly. But I'm not staying in a marriage where I'm neglected." I nodded slowly, pretending to understand, pretending to accept. But inside, I was calculating. Vanessa started dressing differently after that conversation. Tighter clothes. More makeup. She smiled at Tyler in ways that made my stomach turn. He stopped hiding his phone. He'd text right in front of me, laughing at messages I couldn't see. She'd bring him coffee exactly how he liked it, touch his shoulder when she passed, linger in rooms after I left. I was being erased in my own home, replaced by someone younger, someone without stitches, someone who hadn't sacrificed her body. One afternoon, while organizing paperwork for Emma's insurance, I noticed something strange. Bank statements showed large transfers I didn't recognize. My name was missing from documents that used to include me. I pulled more files. His business accounts had been restructured. Assets were quietly being moved. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to leave me with nothing. I spent the next week going through every file in Tyler's office while he was at work. What I found made my blood run cold. Our joint savings had been slowly drained over 6 months. The house we bought together was now titled only in his name, changed 4 months ago when I was pregnant and trusting. Investment accounts I helped build were redirected. He'd been planning this long before Emma was born, long before I'd failed as a wife. This wasn't about postpartum recovery. This was premeditated. He'd used my pregnancy, my vulnerability, my trust, to position himself for a clean exit. Every signature I'd given him, every paper I'd signed while exhausted and swollen and believing in us, he'd used against me. I photographed everything. Bank transfers, legal documents, emails to his lawyer discussing asset protection. I saved it all to a hidden cloud account he didn't know existed. Then I closed the files exactly as I'd found them and went back to playing the role he expected, the broken, desperate wife who didn't know what was coming. But now I did, and I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to watch, wait, and win. I became the perfect victim. I apologized for being difficult during recovery. I thanked Vanessa for helping with Emma, even though it killed me. I asked Tyler what I could do to make him happy again. He ate it up. His confidence grew. He became careless, leaving his phone unlocked, talking louder on calls, staying out later without excuses. He thought I was too weak to fight back. Too hurt. Too dependent. Vanessa grew bolder too. She started rearranging furniture without asking. She bought groceries based on Tyler's preferences, not mine. She acted like the house was already hers. One evening, I served dinner and told Tyler I wanted to try harder for us. He smiled, almost pitying. I appreciate that, he said. But actions matter more than words. Vanessa smirked from across the table. That night, I recorded our conversation. Every dismissive word. Every cruel comparison. Every threat disguised as patience. He handed me everything I needed without realizing it. Because men like Tyler don't see women like me as threats. They see us as obstacles that cry and eventually move aside. He had no idea I was building a case while he was building his exit. The breaking point came when Vanessa disciplined Emma without asking me. My 3-month-old daughter was crying, hungry, and Vanessa picked her up roughly, telling her to stop being dramatic. I walked in just as she was raising her voice at an infant who couldn't even understand words yet. "What are you doing?" I asked quietly. Vanessa didn't even look apologetic. "She needs structure," she said firmly. "You're too soft with her." I took Emma from her arms, my hands shaking. "You don't discipline my daughter. Ever." Tyler walked in then, and instead of supporting me, he sighed. "She's trying to help," he said. "You're being oversensitive." I stared at him. "She's 3 months old. And she's going to be spoiled if you keep coddling her," Vanessa added. Tyler nodded in agreement. He chose her. Over me. Over our child. I didn't argue further. I simply took Emma to the nursery, closed the door, and pulled out my phone. I recorded everything. The argument. His defense of her. His dismissal of me. Every word was documented. That night, I contacted a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The best family attorney in the state. Someone who handled high-asset divorces and didn't lose. 1 week later, I was folding laundry in the bedroom when Tyler's phone rang on the dresser. He was in the shower. The caller ID read Brandon, his business partner. I answered. The voice on the other end wasn't Brandon. It was a woman, breathless and excited. "Did you tell her yet? When's the wedding?" I already started looking at venues. My heart stopped. I said nothing. The woman continued. "Brandon said you're filing next month, so we should start planning now. Spring weddings are..." I hung up. Tyler was planning a wedding timeline before even filing for divorce. He had it all mapped out. The exit. The narrative. The next chapter where I didn't exist. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed, his phone in my hand. "Who's planning your wedding?" I asked calmly. His face went white. Then red. Then cold. "You went through my phone," he said, his voice tight. "No. Someone called. She thought I was you." He grabbed the phone from me. "It's nothing." She's confused. "So you're not planning to marry Vanessa as soon as we're divorced?" Silence. That was all the answer I needed. I stood up. "I'll make this easy for you, Tyler. Do what you want." He looked relieved. Victorious even. He had no idea I'd just given him enough rope to hang himself with. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the woman on the phone, the confidence in her voice, the ease with which she discussed erasing me. It made me wonder how long this had really been going on. I started digging through old emails Tyler thought he'd deleted. I recovered them. Messages from 2 years ago. A different woman. Different name. Same pattern. He'd cheated before, during my pregnancy with Emma. He'd paid her off to stay quiet. $5,000 transferred with a memo that read consultation fees. There were messages apologizing, promising it wouldn't happen again, begging her not to tell me. I felt sick. The man I married, the man I trusted, had been lying for years. This wasn't a mistake. This was who he was. Our perfect marriage was a performance. I'd been playing a role in a script I didn't know existed. I printed everything. Bank transfers. Messages. Apologies. Payoffs. I added it to my growing file. Then I contacted the woman. She was scared at first, thinking I'd blame her. But when I explained I wasn't angry at her, she told me everything. The lies Tyler told. The promises he made. How he'd painted me as cold and controlling. She cried. She said she was sorry. I told her she wasn't the one who needed to apologize. The lawyer's office was in a tall building downtown, the kind with marble floors and glass walls that reflected everything. Her name was Patricia Nguyen, and she had a reputation for destroying men who underestimated their wives. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled back tight. She didn't smile when we shook hands. She got straight to business. I laid out everything. The recordings. The financial documents. The proof of infidelity. The messages. The previous affair. The restructured assets. Patricia went through each page slowly, making notes, asking questions. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me directly. He thinks he's protected, she said. He's not. She explained that because Tyler had moved assets while we were still married, it constituted financial misconduct. Because he'd used marital funds to pay off a mistress, it was dissipation of assets. Because he'd hidden income and restructured titles without my informed consent, it was fraud. The house, the business, the investments, they're all tied to your contributions, Patricia said. You supported him while he built his career. You sacrificed your own work to raise your child. Legally, you're entitled to far more than he thinks. She smiled then, cold and sharp. He's exposed. Completely. I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. For the next 2 weeks, I gathered everything. I documented every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every time Tyler prioritized Vanessa over me or Emma. I recorded dates, times, and witnesses. I pulled medical records showing my postpartum complications, the infections, the emergency follow-up visits Tyler never attended. I saved text messages where he mocked my pain, called me dramatic, blamed me for not healing faster. I compiled financial records showing his secret transfers, hidden accounts, and asset restructuring. I gathered proof of his affair, 2 affairs, actually, with dates and transaction receipts. Patricia told me to keep a journal. Every day, I wrote what happened, what he said, how Vanessa acted, how I felt. It became a timeline of emotional abuse and betrayal. The evidence was overwhelming. But I didn't act yet. I waited. Then, one Friday night, Tyler invited friends over for dinner. He wanted to show off. To prove he was still in control. That was his biggest mistake. Because what he didn't know was that his control was already gone. I just hadn't told him yet. That night, everything I'd been building came together. And Tyler walked right into the trap. Dinner started pleasant enough. Tyler's work friends filled our dining room, laughing, drinking wine, complimenting the food Vanessa had prepared. I sat at the end of the table, quiet, smiling politely. Then one of his friends, Andrew, asked how I was doing after the baby. Before I could answer, Tyler jumped in. She's been struggling, he said with a sympathetic sigh. Postpartum has been rough. She's not really herself anymore. Everyone nodded, concerned. Vanessa chimed in from the kitchen doorway. It's hard when new moms lose themselves. I try to help where I can. Tyler smiled at her. Vanessa's been a lifesaver. Supportive. Understanding. Everything a family needs. The table went quiet for a second, the subtext hanging heavy. Then someone laughed nervously and the conversation moved on. But I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I just sat there, watching Tyler rewrite history in real time. That night, after everyone left, Tyler didn't come to bed. He slept in the guest room, with the door locked. The message was clear. The marriage was over for him. He just hadn't told me officially yet. But I already knew. And I was ready for him to find out what happened when you underestimated the wrong woman. 2 days later, Tyler moved out. He packed a suitcase, told me he needed space, and checked into a hotel downtown. Vanessa went with him. He didn't even pretend anymore. This is temporary, he said, standing in the doorway with his bag. I just need to clear my head. I nodded. Take your time. He looked surprised. Maybe even disappointed that I wasn't begging. But I just stood there, calm, holding Emma, watching him leave. The door closed. Silence filled the house. For the first time in months, I could breathe. That afternoon, I called Patricia. He moved out, I told her. Good, she said. That makes this easier. The next morning, I triggered the first move. Patricia filed an emergency motion to freeze all joint accounts pending a full financial audit. She cited dissipation of assets, hidden accounts, and financial misconduct. By noon, Tyler's credit cards started declining. His business transaction for a new property stalled because the joint account he'd planned to use was locked. His lawyer called Patricia, confused, demanding an explanation. She gave him one, in legal terms that made it clear Tyler was in serious trouble. Then Tyler called me. For the first time in weeks, he needed something. And I had all the power. Tyler's voice was tight, barely controlled. What did you do? He demanded. I froze our accounts, I said calmly, feeding Emma her bottle. Why would you do that? I can't access anything. My deals are falling apart. Then you should call your lawyer. This is insane, he shouted. We're still married. You can't just lock me out of my own money. Our money, I corrected. And yes, I can. Especially when you've been moving it without telling me. Silence. Then he switched tactics. His voice softened, turned pleading. Look, I know things have been hard. But this isn't the way to handle it. We can work this out. Can we? I asked. Because last I checked, you moved into a hotel with our nanny. More silence. That's temporary. You're twisting everything. Am I? Or am I just finally paying attention? He tried reasoning. Then begging. Then threats. He told me I was making a huge mistake. That I'd regret this. That I was ruining everything we'd built. I stayed calm through all of it. Tyler, you should really talk to your lawyer. I think you're going to need one. Then I hung up. The next morning, a process server knocked on his hotel room door. Tyler answered, annoyed, expecting room service. Instead, he got divorce papers. And his entire world started crumbling. Tyler showed up at the house that evening, papers in hand, face red with rage. You filed for divorce, he shouted from the doorway. I didn't let him in. I stood in the frame, blocking his entry. Yes. Without even talking to me? We've been talking for months, Tyler. You just weren't listening. He waved the papers. This is insane. You're claiming abandonment, infidelity, financial misconduct. These are lies. No, they're documented facts. His face twisted. You're going to destroy me over hurt feelings? Grow up. I felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just clarity. You're being served because you earned it. Every decision you made brought you here. He tried to push past me. I held the door firm. If you come inside without my permission, I'll call the police. Leave. This is my house. No, it's our house. And you abandoned it. Now leave or I'll document this too. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The woman he'd controlled, dismissed, and betrayed was gone. He was looking at someone new. Someone who wouldn't break. He left, shouting threats as he walked to his car. I closed the door, locked it, and checked on Emma. She was sleeping peacefully. Safe. Protected. And for the first time, I felt like I was too. The next week, everything fell apart for Tyler. Fast. Vanessa, who'd been so confident, so comfortable playing house with him, suddenly disappeared. Her phone went to voicemail. Her social media went dark. Tyler called me, desperate. Have you heard from Vanessa? I almost laughed. Why would I hear from your girlfriend? She's not answering. I think something's wrong. Or maybe she realized you don't have money anymore. Silence. The truth landed hard. Vanessa hadn't loved Tyler. She'd loved the lifestyle. The nice house. The expensive dinners. The illusion of security. Once the accounts froze, once the credit cards declined, once the man she thought was wealthy turned out to be financially exposed, she ran. Tyler had believed she wanted him. But she'd wanted what he represented. Now that the mask was off, so was she. 2 days later, he showed up at the house again, but this time he wasn't angry. He was broken. He stood on the porch, looking smaller somehow, his eyes red. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I let him in this time. Not because I forgave him, but because I wanted him to see what he'd lost. Emma was playing on a blanket in the living room, giggling at a toy. The house was clean, calm, peaceful. I was managing just fine without him. Better, even. Tyler sat on the couch, his hands shaking slightly. "I made a mistake," he started. "A huge mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. The stress, the pressure at work, I took it out on you. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. He kept going. "I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things. But I was confused. I didn't mean any of it." I placed a folder on the coffee table between us. Thick. Heavy. He looked at it, confused. "What's this?" "Transcripts," I said. "Of every conversation we've had over the last 3 months. Every insult. Every threat. Every time you chose Vanessa over me. Every time you dismissed my pain." I opened the folder. Page after page of his own words, printed clearly, dated, time-stamped. His face went pale as he read. "You were recording me?" "I was documenting abuse." He looked up, stunned. "Abuse? I never hit you." "You don't have to hit someone to destroy them, Tyler." I pulled out another section. Financial records. Bank transfers. Hidden accounts. Emails to his lawyer. "You tried to steal everything we built. You restructured assets while I was pregnant. You moved money while I was recovering from childbirth. You planned to leave me with nothing." His mouth opened, but no words came. "And this," I added, pulling out the final section. "Proof of your affair 2 years ago. The woman you paid off. The lies you told." Tyler's hands trembled as he held the papers. "I want a divorce," I said calmly. "And you're going to give me everything I'm owed." The courtroom was cold, sterile, with fluorescent lights that made everything feel harsh. Tyler sat across from me with his lawyer, a man who looked increasingly uncomfortable as Patricia laid out our case. She presented the financial records first. Clear evidence of asset dissipation, hidden accounts, and fraudulent transfers. Tyler's lawyer tried to argue they were business decisions. Patricia destroyed that argument with emails showing Tyler explicitly planned to hide assets from me during the divorce. Then came the infidelity evidence. Messages. Photos. Testimony from the woman he'd paid off. Proof that he'd used marital funds to support his affair and silence his mistress. Tyler's lawyer objected, claiming it was irrelevant. The judge disagreed. Then Patricia played the recordings. Tyler's voice filled the courtroom, cold and dismissive, mocking my postpartum pain, calling me a failure as a wife, planning his future with Vanessa while I recovered from childbirth. The judge's expression hardened with each word. She was a woman in her 60s, and I could see the disgust forming. When the recordings ended, Patricia presented medical records. Documentation of my emergency postpartum complications, the infections, the physical trauma. Records showing Tyler missed every follow-up appointment. Finally, Patricia addressed Tyler's complete abandonment of his newborn daughter to pursue an affair with our employee. The room was silent when she finished. Heavy. Then the judge spoke. Her question was simple but devastating. The judge leaned forward, looking directly at Tyler. "Mr. Hayes," she said slowly, "can you explain why you believed your wife's postpartum recovery removed her obligation to meet your sexual demands?" The courtroom went completely silent. Tyler's face flushed red. His lawyer whispered something to him urgently. I didn't mean it like that," Tyler stammered. "Then how did you mean it?" the judge pressed. "Because the evidence suggests you viewed your wife's medical condition as a personal inconvenience and used it to justify infidelity and financial misconduct." Tyler looked at his lawyer desperately. His lawyer stood. "Your Honor, emotions were high. My client made mistakes in communication, but mistakes." The judge's voice was sharp. "Or a pattern of abuse and exploitation?" She looked at the evidence again. "This court sees a man who used his wife's vulnerability during pregnancy and childbirth to restructure assets in his favor. Who committed adultery? Who abandoned his newborn child? Who showed no remorse until facing legal consequences?" Tyler tried to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I'll render my decision after reviewing all materials. This hearing is adjourned." We left the courtroom. Patricia squeezed my shoulder. That question ended him, she said quietly. Judges don't ask questions like that unless they've already decided. I nodded, watching Tyler leave through the opposite door, his shoulders slumped. He finally understood. This wasn't about hurt feelings or revenge. This was about justice. And it was coming. The verdict came 3 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom, Emma with my mother, waiting as the judge reviewed her notes. Patricia sat beside me, calm and confident. Tyler looked pale, defeated before the decision was even read. The judge began. In the matter of Hayes versus Hayes, this court finds substantial evidence of marital misconduct, financial fraud, and emotional abuse. She outlined every finding. The hidden assets, awarded to me. The house, granted to me as primary custodian of our child. The business accounts Tyler tried to hide, split with the majority awarded to me due to his misconduct. Child custody, granted primarily to me, with supervised visitation for Tyler pending evaluation. Spousal support, awarded to me for 3 years to compensate for career sacrifices. And damages. The judge ordered Tyler to pay additional damages for emotional distress and financial misconduct. The total amount made Tyler's lawyer close his eyes. Tyler sat frozen, staring at the table. Everything he'd tried to take, he lost. Everything he'd tried to hide, I won. His business reputation, already damaged by the public filings, was now completely destroyed. Patricia smiled slightly. I felt no triumph. Just relief. The fight was over. I'd won not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd refused to be erased. Because I'd documented everything. Because I'd stood up when he expected me to fall. The judge banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. I walked out into the sunlight, free for the first time in years. The social fallout hit Tyler fast. Within days, friends started distancing themselves. People who'd laughed at his jokes during that dinner, who'd smiled at his dismissals of me, suddenly stopped returning his calls. His business partner, Brandon, released a statement dissolving their partnership, citing incompatible values and ethical concerns. Tyler's family, who'd always adored him, finally confronted him. His mother called me, crying, apologizing for not seeing what was happening. His sister sent a long email expressing disgust at his behavior. Even his father, who'd always defended him, told him he was ashamed. Vanessa, who'd disappeared during the trial, resurfaced briefly to give an interview to a local blogger. She claimed she'd been manipulated, that Tyler had lied to her, that she never knew the full truth. She painted herself as another victim. Some people believed her. Most didn't. Tyler tried to rebuild his image. He posted on social media about learning and growing and taking accountability. But the comments were brutal. People posted screenshots of the court documents, which had become public record. His attempts at sympathy fell flat. Then he made his biggest mistake. He tried to smear my name online. He posted vague accusations about me being vindictive, controlling, and mentally unstable. He implied I'd manipulated the courts and lied about everything. It lasted exactly 4 hours before Patricia sent him a cease and desist letter. And before I posted receipts. I didn't want to go public. I'd tried to keep everything private for Emma's sake. But Tyler forced my hand. So I posted a simple statement on social media. I stayed silent while my ex-husband tried to rewrite history. But since he's chosen to lie publicly, here's the truth. I attached court documents. Medical records showing my postpartum complications. Screenshots of his messages mocking my pain. Financial records proving he'd hidden assets. Testimony transcripts from the trial. Everything was redacted to protect Emma's privacy, but the evidence was clear and undeniable. The response was immediate. Tyler's post was ratioed within an hour. Thousands of comments calling him out. Hundreds of shares. Local news picked it up. A parenting blog wrote an article titled, "When Postpartum Pain Becomes Your Husband's Excuse to Cheat." His employer, a mid-sized tech firm, put him on leave pending an internal review. 3 days later, they terminated his employment, citing that his behavior reflected poorly on company values. His professional reputation, already damaged, completely collapsed. LinkedIn connections disappeared. Industry contacts stopped responding. The career he'd built, partially on my support and sacrifices, crumbled. Tyler deleted all his social media accounts. His lawyer sent a letter demanding I remove my post. Patricia responded that truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Everything stayed up. Tyler tried to disappear, but the internet doesn't forget. And neither did I. With the legal battle over and Tyler out of our lives, I finally started healing. Really healing. Not just physically, though my body eventually recovered from childbirth. But emotionally. Mentally. I started therapy. Twice a week at first, then once a week. I talked about the years of subtle control I'd missed. The way Tyler had slowly isolated me from friends. The way he'd made me doubt my own reality. My therapist called it gaslighting. Emotional abuse. I called it survival. Because I'd survived it. I joined a support group for divorced mothers. Hearing other women's stories helped me realize I wasn't alone. So many of us had been dismissed, betrayed, replaced. But we were rebuilding. I focused on Emma. Watching her grow, laugh, discover the world. She'd never remember the chaos of her first year. She'd only know stability, love, safety. I started working again, freelance at first. Then a part-time position at a consulting firm. My career, which I'd paused for marriage and motherhood, slowly came back to life. The money from the divorce settlement gave me breathing room. I wasn't wealthy, but I was secure. Independent. Free. I bought new furniture. Repainted the house. Erased every trace of Tyler until the space felt truly mine. Emma took her first steps in our living room. I cried, not from sadness, but from joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I was a mother. A survivor. A woman who'd refused to disappear. And I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. 18 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a message. It came through email, from an address I didn't recognize at first. Then I saw the name. Tyler. My finger hovered over the delete button. But curiosity won. I opened it. I know I don't deserve a response, it began. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know that I was wrong. About everything. I misjudged you. I underestimated you. I treated you like you were disposable, and you were the strongest person in my life. I lost everything. My career. My reputation. My family's respect. But I deserve to lose it. What I did to you, to Emma, it was unforgivable. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. I read it 3 times. Looking for manipulation. For hidden motives. For the trap. But it seemed genuine. Broken even. I thought about responding. Thought about telling him I forgave him, even though I wasn't sure I did. Thought about acknowledging his apology. But then I thought about Emma, asleep in her room. About the life I'd built without him. About the peace I'd fought so hard to find. And I closed the email without replying. Some apologies don't require acceptance. Some bridges are better left burned. Tyler needed to say it. But I didn't need to hear it. I'd already moved on. 2 years after everything fell apart, I stood in our backyard watching Emma chase butterflies through the garden I'd planted that spring. She was 3 years old now, full of energy and laughter, completely unaware of the chaos that had surrounded her birth. My career had fully rebuilt. I was managing a team at the consulting firm, earning more than I ever had during my marriage. The house was paid off, thanks to the settlement. Emma's college fund was growing steadily. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetings and casual dinners. Learning to trust again was slow, careful work. But I was open to it. I had friends now. Real friends who'd supported me through the divorce and its aftermath. Women who understood what it meant to rebuild after betrayal. My relationship with Tyler was minimal. He saw Emma twice a month under supervision, per the court order. He was always on time, always appropriate. He'd changed, or at least learned to perform change convincingly. I didn't care which. It wasn't my concern anymore. Emma called me from the garden, holding a flower she'd picked. I walked over, kneeled down, and she placed it in my hair, giggling. "You're pretty, Mama," she said. I kissed her forehead. "You're everything," I whispered. This was my life now. Small moments. Simple joys. Hard-won peace. I'd lost a marriage but gained myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. People ask me sometimes if I regret how everything ended. If I wish I'd handled it differently, fought less, forgiven more. The answer is always no. Tyler lost his marriage, his reputation, his career, and the illusion of control he'd built his entire identity around. He lost friendships, family respect, and the future he'd planned with someone else's labor supporting him. But I didn't destroy his life. I didn't ruin him out of spite or revenge or anger. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his choices. For years, I'd absorbed his cruelty, excused his neglect, and minimized his betrayals. I'd made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I'd sacrificed my own needs so his could be met. And when I stopped doing that, when I finally stood up and said, "No more," everything he'd built on my silence collapsed. That wasn't destruction. That was revelation. The truth is, Tyler destroyed himself. He chose to betray me. He chose to mock my pain. He chose to plan a future that erased me. He chose to steal what we'd built together. Every consequence he faced, he earned. I just made sure those consequences arrived. I didn't destroy his life. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his choices. And sometimes, that's all it takes to bring a house of cards crashing down. Today, I'm free. Emma's thriving. And I'm finally, completely myself. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it feels like peace.